All right. So each bout is going to go through this mechanical or metabolic fatigue recovery, adaptation, and regression. And really, what we're looking to ideally do is to improve recovery and increase adaptation. So we want to recover faster and improve the adaptation. That's what we're looking to do with our diet and our other behaviors. The only things that we've ever found that have been found to date that improve recovery and improve adaptation are sleep. Got to get tons of sleep when you're training really heavy. And the second thing is protein in the diet, recovery protein, allowing you to recover better. Most things that improve recovery impair adaptation. And this is where we don't want to be. Not during training. We don't want to recover quicker but not have the adaptation because we don't care what our performance is tomorrow. We care what it is in the future. So let's really focus on trying to make the fatigue harder because the metabolic fatigue is greater, but the mechanical fatigue is the same. And then try and get that recovery back as quickly using protein or recovery nutrition as well as good quality sleep. All right? So as we look at these different phases, we're going to do our base phase. We're going to heavy weight training on our legs because that's our sport-specific muscle. We're going to eliminate our vitamin C and vitamin E from the diet, synthetics. We're going to do a lot of fasting and low glycogen training. That's where the paper comes in this week. And we're going to do lots of long sessions, a little bit of speed, just to keep our muscles thinking about having, we run fast. And this is where we bring in altitude training because, again, increasing oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. So all of these things are what we're doing in the base phase. So how do we do it? Why do we take out antioxidants? Because any antioxidant that we add, if you look at PGSwin alpha before and then after exercise, you can see that there's this nice big increase in PGSwin alpha. If I treat with any antioxidant, there's vitamin E, there's vitamin C, you can see that we completely block the increase in PGSwin alpha promoter activity. What happens in people? Vitamin C and E supplemented individuals, they did training for the exact same amount of time as the placebo group. The placebo group increased mitochondrial protein much more than the ones that took the vitamin C and vitamin E. The result is telling us that the vitamin C and E is going to actually decrease endurance adaptations. So we don't do that. Most people take vitamin C and E as a way to increase upper respiratory tract health. And so there's other ways that you can do that, and we'll talk about that later as we go through. The one thing that we do want to do, increase the metabolic stress while decreasing mechanical stress. The best way to do that is by using glycogen depletion training. So this is the study out of John Hawley's group where they did the sleep low training, where basically both groups had the same amount of carbohydrate in the diet. The sleep low group had the carbohydrate all front loaded in the breakfast and the lunch and the snack. And then they had a dinner where it was a carbohydrate depleted dinner. So what they did is they trained for 3 weeks with 3 high intensity training sessions in the evening. And then they ate a dinner that had no carbohydrate in it. They went to bed, they woke up the next day, and they did a long, slow distance session the next morning. What we saw as far as their 10K time, they improved 10K time by 3%. And what you should see in each of these lines, they're all going down. Some of them went down a lot, others went down a little bit, but they all go down. If you look at the control group, no dietary intervention. What you can see is some of them are getting better, but most of them are actually staying the same or getting a little bit worse. All right, so how does low glycogen training work? Well, what it does is one of the most important things it does is it activates the PPARs. So the PPARs are these fatty acid activated transcription factors. And when you do 2 sessions of exercise, one the next day, again, you've replenished your glycogen, or 1 hour later when you've got low glycogen. This is data from rats that we generated, and you can see that in normal glycogen, if we look at PPAR activity, so the transcriptional activity of the PPAR promoter, when you did your exercise with normal glycogen, there's no effect on PPARs. When you start with low glycogen, you actually see a significant increase in PPAR activity. That's going to be because there's greater reliance on fatty acids for that second bout of exercise. The result is there's going to be a greater shift towards using fats, and that's going to drive PPARs to be increased activity. So you've got more fat circulating, activating the fatty acid activated transcription factors, going to increase your capacity to use fat as a fuel. In fact, when we did this type of training in humans, we looked over a 3-week period. They did low glycogen training where they exercised twice a day, or they did the same amount of exercise separated by 24 hours where they could regenerate their glycogen. So in one group, they're training every other day, and the other group, they're training every day. What we found in the group that started half of their sessions with low glycogen is that they're able to increase the amount of muscle triglycerides they oxidize during exercise. So they're able to use more fat as a fuel. Again, that's because they've got more PPAR activity. So the PPAR activity is going way up. That's increasing fatty acid oxidation enzymes. And what that does, that saves muscle glycogen, and that's going to allow you to sprint later on in the race. That's going to allow you to be able to win that race at the end. All right. So, of course, being the people that we are, we go into maybe there's a nutritional way to do this. So what we've developed, or what we developed over the past number of years here, is there's a drug that's known to activate PPAR delta, which is the PPAR that's in your muscle. And what you see is that increases the activity of PPAR it's about 13-fold. It's a huge increase. What you can see here is that we were able to come together with 3 nutrients, and those 3 nutrients were things that we identified in muscle cell culture, and what we could get is a 7-fold induction of PPAR activity using just those 3 nutrients. Those 3 nutrients gave us about 1/3 of the activation that we saw with the chemical activator, the drug that activates PPARs. And so this might be a way that we can support the low glycogen training to increase PPAR activity even further and to drive even more adaptation. But that still needs to be tested in people. The one reason that we don't always just shift to a low carbohydrate diet all the time is what's called the glycolytic dilemma. This is, if you fat adapt people, they become fat adapted, they're better able to use fat because they have a ketogenic or a low carbohydrate diet. What you can see is that the fat adapted group here, when it comes down to PDH activity, so that's that enzyme that's taking pyruvate into the mitochondria, what happens? PDH activity is lower in those that are fat adapted because you have more acetyl-CoA coming in from fat, and that means that you don't bring in as much from carbohydrate. We can make energy faster from carbohydrate than fat, so the result is that sprint performance is way lower in the fat adapted group, and that's been shown both by Trent Stellenworth here and by Tim Noakes in South Africa. Is that what you've got really good fat utilization during the long, slow, high intensity or the long duration exercise, but if you have to sprint, the ones that are fat adapted can never sprint nearly as well as those that aren't fat adapted. So that's why we would only use these sessions about 3 times a week. Anything more than that, we worry about getting suppression of our ability to use carbohydrate as a fuel.